Where we have 2.6 now, and 2.6 is linear inequalities with two variables. So we're worried about graphing these here. So I want to graph this line, which is basically what we're on here first. So let's try to graph this. First of all, in order to graph, you need to get y by itself. So in order for me to get y by itself and graph this, I need to get y alone. And this is like saying -1 times y. So I'm going to divide both sides by -1. So I end up having a y, and on this side, 1 divided by -1 is -1x. -2 divided by -1 is +2. Alright, sounds great, except here's a little catch. Most of you want to put this sign in there, and you can't. Why? Because remember, whenever you divide by a negative, you flip the sign. So you actually have a sign that faces this way. So when we go to graph this, honestly, graph it just like this. You graph them the same way. Alright, pretend like that's not even there. So pretend like that's not there for right now. Graph it the same way. This is your y-intercept, which means I go up 2 and put a point. This is my slope. And my slope, it's like saying as a fraction, -1/1, which means I go down 1 and I go right 1. So down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. And I put all my points. Okay. I connect the line with a straight line, but remember the rules. If it's greater than or less than, it's a solid line. If it's less than or greater than, it is a dashed line. So this is a greater than, or in this actual case it's a less than, so it's a solid line. So I connect this with a solid line. But whenever you graph inequalities, you have to shade. So I have to pick a point not on that line and shade it. Well, there's 0, 0. That's a point not on that line. So when I plug 0, 0 in here, 0 means I get a 0 on this side. I have greater than or equal to. It means I get a 0 on this side and I get a -2 as my answer. Is that true? If it's true, you shade towards the point. So the point's over here. That means I shade everything on this side of the line because that's towards the point. So all of this gets shaded in. All that gets shaded in. Next problem is another -1, so let's try out something new here. Oh my goodness. There we go. Let's try out something a little different. Let's try out this one. You get y by itself. So in order to get y by itself, I subtract a 2x onto both sides. So by doing that, that cancels out, and I did that subtraction because it was a positive 2x. Negative y is less than -2x minus 2. It's like a -1, so it's negative times y, so I have to divide both sides by -1. So that cancels out, gives me a y. Remember, whenever you divide by a negative, you flip the sign, so it's now greater than. -2 divided by -1 is 2x. -2 divided by -1 is +2. So I go and graph this. This is my y-intercept right here. So that means I go up 2 and put a point right there. Alright, the slope of my line is 2, so it's like saying 2/1. So that means I go up 2 and right 1, up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1, and I can do the same the other way. Because it is a greater than sign, it is a dashed line, right? So I do a dashed line the entire way up and down there. So it's a dashed line. And I pick a point not in that line. So I'm going to pick 0, 0. 0, 0 is not on that line. So what that means is plug a 0 in for x, which means that's gone, and plug a 0 in for y, which means that's gone. So really I have, is 0 less than -2? No, that's false. So here's what happens. Whenever it's false, you shade away from the point, which means that's not true. I shade away from it, meaning I need to shade everything on this side. So all of this needs to be shaded in over here. All of that needs to be shaded in. Everything on that side of the dotted line. We need to get y by itself, so I'll subtract x because it's a positive x, right? So those cancel out, giving me a -6y is greater than -x minus 6. Because it's a -6, I divide both sides by -6. So that's gone. I get y. I flip the sign because it's dividing by a negative. Negative 1 divided by negative 6 is 1/6 x. Negative 6 divided by negative 6 is positive 1. So that means the y-intercept is 1. I go up 1 and right 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Down 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And because it is greater than sign, it is dashed line. So I have a dashed line there. There it is. Pick a point again, not on the line, so I'm going to pick 0, 0. So that means plug this in. 0 goes in here. 0 goes in here, canceling all that out. Is 0 greater than negative 6? That is true. Since it's true, that means I shade towards the point. So that means I shade everything down here towards the point.